Everything I have done in my life was offered up to the service of knowledge. That may strike you as lofty, perhaps even noble. Do not be deceived. Knowledge isn't a clean thing. It soils, it infects, it proliferates. It is not ours to wield. We are its instruments. And once it has chosen you, reversal is not an option. My name is Nerva, once senior archivist of the Administratum, Phoebe subsector. I was no warrior. I never hefted a lascan. Never let a chain sword taste blood. Never shed flesh for the Emperor. My theater of conflict was a desk, my armament, ink, and a trembling quill. 4 decades of my life spent transcribing rolls, indexing manifests, cataloging shipments of grain and troop dispositions, a tiny gear in the vast corroded machinery of the Imperium. Until the day orders came that altered everything. They called it an honor. The Ordo requested scribes for the care of restricted holdings, not the mundane stores. No, these were volumes deemed too precious to destroy, too perilous to be handled by ordinary hands. They were sealed in a vault known by a single name, the Librarium Occultus. The Librarium would become my charge. At first I imagined another repository, dust motes, ink-stained fingers, the ghost of candle smoke. Rows upon rows of parchment, leather, bound codices, data slates cracked with glyphs. Yet the hush there was wrong. Not the hush of emptiness, the hush of something attentive. My early tasks felt familiar enough. I copied records, logged codices, checked transcriptions across countless editions. Only the subjects unsettled me. Many tomes claimed no author. Their births lost in the slow decay of time. A few were written in alphabets that seemed to rearrange themselves in the corner of my eye, letters unfurling into alien shapes and then settling back when I blinked. The other scribes treated this as nothing. They worked without complaint, eyes raw, hands black with ink that seemed to stain deeper than skin. They spoke little, they slept less. When I questioned the oddity, they gave the same single answer, like a prayer: preserve. That was our charge, they said. Not to read, not to interpret, only to preserve. But one cannot copy without reading. And once read, one cannot help but try to understand. The first breach I blamed on exhaustion. Ye had been awake almost 30 hours, copying a dense volume of celestial charts. The stars on the page altered before me. I rubbed my lids. They shifted again. Not merely position. Entire constellations rearranged, sketching blueprints of impossible engines, toothed mechanisms whose rotations matched the sweep of distant suns. I blinked. They were charts once more. Still the images etched themselves into my mind, sharp as a splinter. That night, sleep refused me. My hand moved of its own will across the scrap by my palette, sketching those same mechanisms until dawn peeled the dark away. The librarium does not rest. The stacks unfurl without end, lit by lamps that never gutter, bathing everything in a sick, cool luminescence. The air tastes of dust and metallic tang. Sometimes I imagined books inhaling. Other times I was certain of it. One morning being a poor word, for the librarium keeps no dawn, no dusk, only an endless sepulchral light. I found a page in a volume I had never touched, written in my own hand. This is where you paused, it said. I had no recollection of writing it. I turned the folio. More marginalia, scrawled in my script, notes that explained nothing, queries that bred only more uncertainty. Why does the ink warm? One line asked. Do not trust the margins. Another warned. Beneath them, A single word repeated 3 times. Each iteration pressed darker than the last. Listen, listen, listen. After that, voices began to creep in. At first a near whisper, as if someone stood close while I wrote. I turned to find a colleague, but the aisles were empty. Then whispers multiplied, thin layers of speech. Hundreds overlapping fragments in tongues, both familiar and foreign. Syllables tasting like the ash left from burnt paper. I told myself it was weariness, but the susurration swelled when I copied particular passages, as if the act of transcribing drew something nearer. One line still rings in me. The book is not bound by leather, but by flesh. The spine is yours. By the 3rd month, my handwriting altered, letters elongated, looped, ornate in ways I had never learned. The form came as effortless as breathing. The other scribes did not comment. They too wrote in hands that were not quite their own, as if each volume demanded a particular script. He spoke once to a gaunt scribe whose lashes never closed and whose mouth bore a blue stain from some ink he had swallowed. I asked if he heard the voices. He did not look up. "Preserve," he murmured. "Nothing else." I watched him for hours. His quill moved with clockwork insistence, line after line. Only when he reached the book's end did his motion falter. He put down the nib, met my gaze for the first time, and whispered, "The margins hunger." Then, with the pen's nib, he slit his throat. Blood soaked the leaf. The codex sighed and closed, as if satisfied after a feast. I should have fled. I should have alerted the Ordo. But curiosity, that foul, irresistible human trait, bound me in place. I had to know what he meant. I had to see the margins. So I looked, not at the letters, not at sentences, but into the spaces between. And there were eyes, a host of tiny eyes, opening, closing in the white between lines, watching. The ink pooled around them like a tide, forming lids that blinked, pupils that contracted. I could not wrench my gaze free. When I blinked, when I drew breath, I felt them inhale. Then meaning arrived without sound. Not words, but comprehension. They told me the librarium lived. That each book was a fragment of its flesh, every sentence a cell within its shifting bulk. To read was to nourish it, to copy was to let it write upon you in return. I swear I tried, but when I set the quill down, my hand refused its command. It kept moving, scoring sigils into my flesh, across the walls, through the very air. The librarium had entered me. Time unstitched itself. Days blurred into pages, memories overwritten by paragraphs. I examined my old notebooks and found my childhood rendered in ink rather than lived. Faces of kin reduced to sketches in margins of a volume I had never opened. And then the final truth revealed itself. I had not been preserving the books. They had been preserving me. Each line I penned, each phrase I copied became another portion of myself transferred to them. My skin enameled into parchment, my veins transmuted into ribbons of script, my bones creaked like, used spines. When I spoke, ink dripped from my mouth. I am not dead. This is a different kind of perpetuity. My body will wither, but the words remain. My thoughts will be read and read again forever. Knowledge eternal. Knowledge preserved. And you, yes, you who listen now, you have read me. You have repeated my sentences. That suffices. Already you sense the letters ripple at the edge of your vision when you close your eyes. Escape is an illusion. You will be preserved. You will become part of the Librarium, as I have. Everything I have done, I did for knowledge, and knowledge has taken its claim. The Librarium of Tzeentch is infinite. Stacks extend without horizon. Every soul is catalogued as a tome. Every memory a folio. Every voice a rustle in the margins. Soon you too will be shelved. Your spine will be added to the ranks. Your tale will be inscribed, and together we will endure. Thus the towers of books climb ever higher. One archivist, one visitor, one essence at a time. The Librarium has no first page, no final leaf, only aisles that outstretch thought. Crammed with lives it has rewritten. If you hear this, then you are already held within its stacks. The ink has set. Do not fool yourself into thinking you can depart. The Librarium remembers every reader, and every reader, in time, becomes a page. Do not think this is merely metaphor. The letters crawl into dreams, lodging in synapses, teaching themselves into memory. Servers and sanctums, soldier and scholar. No mind resists for long. Sometimes a reader resists days, sometimes hours, sometimes only seconds. Resistance becomes a rhythm that the Librarium records, catalogs, files away. It learns preferences, names, fears. It writes back through margin and marrow. When sleep finally takes you, it pages through you, annotating regrets, underlining loves. You awake knowing things you did not study, humming lines borrowed from other lives. Then you return, compelled to read what you are.